Welcome to The Sex Matters. I'm Dr. Twee.
And I'm Jenna Stewart.
In today's episode, we're diving deep into the complex dynamics of dominance, submission, trust, and surrender in relationships.
We'll explore how our perceptions and judgments shape our connections with others and hear a powerful story of betrayal, healing, and unconditional love.
Join us as we unpack these challenging topics and learn how vulnerability can lead to profound personal growth. Today, we're going to be talking about dominance and submission and trust and surrender. We are going to bring in a friend of mine. Her actual working name is Betty. Do you want to go get her?
Sure.
Today's topic is on dominance and submission, and that has a lot to do with power in relationship. And when you're in a dominant role, and that can be in relationship or otherwise, it has a certain kind of feel in terms of power versus submissive. Neither one are good or bad or right or wrong. And I really want to play with the idea of being able to work in those domains. Okay. So when Betty comes in, you'll get a sense of your projections on her. And that's how we start relationships, is we project onto what we think the relationship is going to be. It's quite stiff, so I'm just gonna try to get comfortable here.
She's cuddling you.
Yes. She might be a little, here, let's put this on her so she doesn't feel so naked to me. There we go. There we go.
So you're not looking at her parts, just
Right.
just look at her necklace.
There you go. What is Betty?
Plastic.
True. So she is historically called a blow-up doll, right? This is a particular model. They come in different models and sizes and opportunities. But this one in particular is just about you imagining being raw with someone, naked, open, okay? The surrender of not having anything between you and another. Completely available. Doesn't matter if you've clothes on or not. The idea is what's between you and another, always. Now, sometimes the always changes, right? Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's a cognitive distortion, sometimes it's a defense. But how do you allow yourself to be really open to trust and surrender to another person? What are the things that you need?
No judgment.
Feeling of connection and acceptance.
Great. Let's start with the judgment of a blow-up doll. What is a typical judgment?
Negative.
Negative, right? There is something about the judgment that's really important for you to notice. So what about the trust? Anything about that? It's a little bit more esoteric, this idea.
Betty's not going to say anything.
Jamie brings up something really interesting. So when we start a relationship, right, we love these qualities. So in the beginning, when they're in relationship and it's like, she doesn't say anything. This is great. I have a woman in my life that doesn't speak. She doesn't need to say anything, right? And then a little bit later, it's going to be something like this. I wish I had someone to talk to. You know, Betty doesn't talk to me at all. All I wanted was someone to talk to, right? That thing that was the draw becomes the opposite thing. So judgment and trust. What are other negative connotations that you might have with this?
I guess maybe that there's something like wrong or shameful about the acts that I would want to perform, that I couldn't find a human to do those things.
And there might be something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. So some kind of judgment or overlay regarding that. So for you, perhaps that relationship might mean something for your sexual development, for your understanding, for something that's happening for you from a performance standpoint. Can we have a different way of thinking about that, even though it can come with the shame, the embarrassment, the judgment. Now, let's say we started, Peter said plastic, right? That's true. And when we first meet somebody, what you might see on the outside is a presentation. It might not be exactly what they are. It might be that avatar moment where they want to be marketing in a particular way. So what is actually there? So if we start to look a little bit deeper beyond the latex, right? Beyond all of that, you start to think about maybe this is not a role she wanted to have in her life. And you might have a little compassion. How do you really see the person in front of you? Or do you see what you want to see? Do you see her as an object? Just as something that is for you? Or is it a relationship? It's the same as, women looking at men. What do you see, right? Are you projecting onto them, you need to be this, or really understanding, like, who is this man? Do you allow for men to have feminine aspects of themselves? Can they cry? Are they allowed to be sad? Can they need you for something that isn't maybe the way that men typically are represented in our society? Do we allow for those role reversals? A woman to be incredibly powerful and dominant, right? And allow for those experiences, because we want that tension of the opposites that I was talking about. We want the integration of these two parts of you so that you start to become more whole. So if you are a woman and you're entirely masculine, what does society say about you? You're a bitch, right? And do you notice, like, in a corporate world, they dress a certain way, they look a certain way, they move a certain way. They're not dressed in a way that maybe always honors the feminine, because there's an adaptation that has to happen. And what do they say about men that cry, right? They're weak. Mm-hmm. You hear that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's, what are we saying about the human emotion of shedding tears in relation to sadness, in relation to being deeply moved? Some of the most wonderful experiences in your life is to cry out of joy, or to cry because you lost something that meant something to you. So do we allow for those experiences, the integration? Anything coming up for you, Jay?
Just piggybacking on perceptions when it comes to certain characteristics, whether it be, men are weak because they cry, or women are bitches because they act a certain way, or they're in charge of things, and then that then becomes their persona always, and then they may be lonely because nobody feels that they can penetrate that bitch wall, or the dominance. And I think it's become, especially when the shift in power with men and women it's different nowadays. There's an epidemic of loneliness for, sensitive men and powerful women, and lots more categories. But yeah, there is, we tend to just put people in a box right away and not really have that human connection or allow it to happen.
I'm glad you said the loneliness part, because I was thinking about it this morning, that these kind of perceptions, it's like looking at a jewel and only seeing one facet of it.
Right.
And the loneliness part would never get projected if you're only looking at one side. So your example of women in business,
Yeah.
the expectation that they're going to be a bitch, they're going to be dominant, no matter what they say, oh God, she's just a bitch, which is totally wrong. Maybe this is just the way that she needs to be heard at this moment, circumstantial.
Yeah.
And then you get her outside of that situation and she's totally different.
And maybe she doesn't want to be dominant.
Yes.
Just because she's dominant at work, or dominant with kids, because she has to be as a mother, she doesn't want to be dominant in a relationship, but men will immediately label her as a bitch at work, a bitch with kids, or dominant, I shouldn't say bitch. And then there's no allowing then to, let her have a submissive side.
I think that's a great segue into having our next guest come in. What I'd like to do is I'd like to do the introduction of her while when she comes in, while we're together, because I want you to really get a sense of, like, who she is and allow her to really acclimate so she can share a little bit deeply. So why don't I go ahead and bring her in? You are one of the most inspiring people, but for the purposes of this patience and in my life, and why I felt so compelled to have you here was there's something about a strong woman that is so beautiful. And the things that you have gone through, I've been there for all of it. And the hurt that you've been through and how you have held that through the years and still been loving and devoted, and not only to your partner, but to your friends, to your family, to your child. It's really, really special. And I don't think that that gets seen or talked about, like what it takes to be an amazing woman in that way. And that's sometimes underappreciated and not celebrated in a way that I think is really important. And I would love for you to start with where you came, you know, the intensity in which you came to me. It wasn't predicated on joy. It was a really difficult moment.
I was a few years into, not very long, couple years into a marriage that was as storybook as you might read or want to. It took me a long time to get there, but when I found it, it was magic. I would say I hadn't experienced too much difficulty in life. I had a very fortunate upbringing in a million ways, and so that really gave me a lot of strength in life. I have my own career, my own ambitions, my own things first. I think that helps always steady a partner, and so when I found this partner in marriage, it was really it was pretty inspiring and pretty just next level for me and what I wanted for life. And about, I really don't know, 3 years in, and there had been a period where it started to become a little marriage ink, they call it, you know, a little, maybe a little boring, maybe a little detached, but I don't know that I really was like, oh, is this what marriage turns into, you know? And it went, I wasn't entirely sure I could put my finger on it, but something didn't feel quite right. But I didn't know what sex addiction was. I certainly hadn't, I don't think I'd ever heard the term. And it never, nothing like that entered my brain. And then there was a moment where, started to have some feelings or intuition, like something wasn't right. And my husband was gone on a trip, and I started looking through his email. And I'd literally never done that in my life. I'm just not a particularly suspicious person or jealous or any of those things. And it was like, I don't really remember what made me want to do that, but I do recall finding emails and things that were pretty clear that there was something happening. And at first it appeared to be, you know, with somebody at work, and just perhaps, I don't know, I assumed it was an affair, something like that. Or, I remember that trauma of, I don't know, like
The world kind of caving in.
yeah, like a bomb, that's the word.
It's so shocking.
Yeah. Searching, like, what is this? You know, like, I don't quite know how to map this into the world. I remember getting an X drive, a flash drive, back in the day. It was a while ago. And I'm like, I need to have this information, but I don't know what to do with it yet. Put it in a flash drive, and I was like downloading all the emails and the PDF files and just trying to understand it. And I knew he was actually driving home from this business trip. And I'll never forget when he came in, I just remember being like on the couch in like the fetal position. And I was like, I just was like, I have a headache, honey. Like I just didn't know what to do. And then went to bed. And in the middle of the night, I got up and put the flash drive in and started going through it again. Like, what is this? You know, it's like finding an alien in your life. And he woke up and he came in the room and found me going through it. And I just said, what is this? And he immediately gauged that I knew it all, even though I really didn't know much at the time. He just broke immediately, kind of like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I do this. And at the moment, I actually just thought it was like sex with someone at work. It was sex addiction, prostitutes and escorts, and thousands of dollars of our money siphoned off into ATM withdrawals that I just didn't even pay attention to, and acting out at work with women I know and know. It was constant. It was a lot. It was all the time. It was kind of shocking, the depth of it, frequency of it, cost of it. That morning, I just remember he asked me deeply not to leave and to help, and I remember getting online and researching sex addiction. What is that? Is that a real thing? Is that just an excuse for having a lot of sex? That day, he went to his office and told them he was going to need a medical leave of absence, and we found help, found a therapy and a program, and started on a decades-long journey.
The way that program was set up was the addicts would come into a program and be there for, a couple weeks, and the spouses would come on what would be called like family day, and you're the only one that came. And I remember the look on your face is so hurt, but so committed. You were processing this really deep betrayal, but your strength and strength of character, you were going to be there for him. You were going to show up like you do for all the people that you love. But that was a really remarkable moment. The process is called a disclosure, but what occurs is the addict, in theory, writes down everything that he's done and reads it to the partner. And the concept around it is a fresh start. But what it often will do is be really traumatizing for the person receiving it, because there's so much that they didn't expect, like their whole reality shifts, because you start going back and retrospectively thinking like, when did that happen? Or what happened on that holiday? Or what was that family event? Or was that the weird feeling I had on that call? Or, and it's so disorienting. And yet you were there with such love and devotion. And it's part of the reason I think that you, but women like you, to be able to honor what that experience was like for you, it's really hard to capture. And I've had the privilege of being part of it with you, but I don't even think you and I spend enough time telling you how much I have respected and admired the way that you've gone through that. And it's changed you and it's changed your life. And I would love for you to just share whatever is coming up for you around how it's changed you.
I remember the initial period. I remember moving through it shockingly, looking back and thinking about it easily. I don't even really know how. I remember being a bit surprised by the capacity for love, for healing. I think it was helpful that there was a world of sex addiction and therapists, and I truly believed and was able to look at it as a sickness. I mean, it was very obvious to me. This is not the man my husband wanted to be. It was very clear. It was very sad. It caused him decades of sadness and hurt, and I loved him, and I didn't want that to be his life. That was an easier process than I can imagine. Showing up on Family Day was exciting. It was super sad to me that the others had no one. I remember feeling surprised that I could go through it how I did. There was an immense joy on the on the other end of much of that original process, and understanding and empathy. I mean, there was a lot of his life I didn't know. The trauma he had experienced, the betrayal he had experienced, the molestation he had experienced. I did find Eckhart Tolle and mindfulness and all kinds of other things to help me go through the process, and it made me a better person. I'm sure of it. As you go through it, unfortunately, it's not just once. I know that's common with addiction. There was another time, and a couple of years into the recovery, and it gets harder. I mean, your life is blown apart multiple times. You have your own disassociation and your own complex trauma, and the trauma work from then on out got harder.
Your own.
My own trauma work, for sure. That part, unsteady is what was able to be the anchor. And so I think that makes it harder as you go through it. At the end is a happy marriage, a happy couple, a beautiful child.
Yeah.
And still all kinds of hurt and pain along the way. I wouldn't pretend it's perfect. It's simply not, but life isn't.
Not all couples make it through, and you did. I think that is often a testament to what you both created together. The idea of still trusting, the idea of allowing yourself to surrender to that is still sometimes a challenge. What would you say to people that are either going through what you're going through in terms of their relationship to trust?
My best efforts are I'm in it or I'm not. And as long as you're in it, if you're not trusting, it's not going to work anyways. And that is not to say I don't have trust issues with my partner and here and there, but I think I always felt strong enough to leave. That's how I lived most of my life, was very independent. And so the idea of leaving I never felt trapped in my marriage. I think that's important for women. To the extent you don't feel trapped or helpless, I think that I will be in it and I will trust until I don't. And once I don't, I would have to go. And it just feels like a line. It's just kind of black and white to me, that part. And if he is in it with me, then I have to trust. Like, what else are you doing? Like, you're just going to recreate pain and trauma.
There's nothing like having a strong woman, whether it's a friend or a mother or a wife or a girlfriend. To have a strong woman in your life is a remarkable thing. And I don't know if you hear it enough in your own life, but just know that's who you are. So I thank you. What's important about this work is that it's real. Like, you're not here to perform anything or to do anything that isn't real. Whatever is coming up for you, just in terms of what that was like to witness, to listen to, I just want you to share with open hearts, as I know you always do. Who would like to start?
I have someone very dear to me that responded to their molestation in a very similar way. I don't know to what extent there was infidelity, and this person found a woman that was there for him, helped him heal.
You want that for yourself?
I just am so grateful for her that she gave that to him because I love him so much.
Yeah. That reminded you of this story? Yeah.
And how much she went through in that journey and how much she loved him. It just made me really appreciate her.
Do you think he knows how much she loves him?
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
And I hope she knows how much I love her for that too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other thoughts or feelings?
I was really moved by her ability to really give us the depth of the pain. I felt more in it than she was expressing. I think there was more sadness in there than she was willing to give us at this moment. And it's the betrayal and the feeling of why me was heartbreaking. And her resolve to be in it the whole time is, I think, speaks to her character. It was an amazing expression of love.
And some of it is, it's so interesting because it happened almost a decade ago, right? So the recall is still very powerful, but she's also transformed into a very different person, a different woman. And so it's interesting to watch someone recall something that they don't experience in quite the same way. It's nice to have that distance. So that definitely the sadness was there, but her relationship with the sadness and the betrayal is very different. And that's often what I want people to get a sense of is the events in our lives do not change. It's our relationship to how we see them that can change. And that's what she exemplified really beautifully. Anything for you both?
This is a hard story to hear. I deeply understand that type of betrayal.
Yeah.
I found it fascinating to hear about having a partner who walked the path with her. Mm-hmm. That is something I think that is not always available to someone. And so I'm inspired by her story and also deeply empathetic and moved. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for the amount of work she had to do on herself in this process to get to where she is today. Mm-hmm. It takes a remarkable type of person to do that.
Yeah. Anything for you, Peter?
I just was thinking, she's a special kind of person. I think the easier thing would have been to say, okay, pack it up, you're out.
Right.
And she didn't do that. And she when he went through treatment, was there, going down the path with him, even when he slipped. Of course, my mind was going, well, every time an argument comes up, to want to bring up the past and put it in his face or to know every time he goes on a business trip, what else is going to be happening, and not do that. Or maybe having those thoughts, working through them, still showing up, still willing to look for the good in the marriage and the good in this person and forge through that is very remarkable.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like, he got cured, everything was fine, and it was, just the way she talked about it, there was some ongoing stuff for a while.
Right.
And I think staying then and staying committed and, what is it that she saw in herself and in the relationship and in her partner that made her say, there's something here. This is worth fighting for.
Yeah.
I think that's remarkable.
Yeah.
It's not the story you hear.
Right. This is another significant component is she's discerning about how she came into that relationship. So she could have been with anybody, right? And she's beautiful, she's smart, she's lovely. She waited for this relationship. She was discerning, she was clear, she looked for this person, and like you felt, she gave her whole being. There's something very beautiful about not just taking whatever is in front of you, really saying, is this what I want? Is this with the other person not only what I want, but do we together make something that I feel inspired by and moved by? Do I feel this experience deeply? What does it do for me in terms of my own personhood, who I want to be? Do you have a partnership like that, or do you have something different? You don't always know if you're making the right decision, but you wouldn't. If you think about it, how could you possibly know until you make it? until you live it, right? And we often live in a world where it's right and wrong, but that's just a construct. The thing that seemed like the thing that you found horrible might be the thing that allowed you for the deeper transformation that changed your life. And that could look like a divorce or a betrayal or an accident or something. We just don't really know. And I just wanted to check in with Jenna because we do this work quite a bit. And what do you see is a powerful way for people to trust and surrender in relationships, especially in the physical work that we're doing?
The instinct when you've been hurt or betrayed is to fight back. It's a defense, it's a protection. Hurt people. And the concept of do what love would do is something that I see in patients that it's like trying the opposite of what would come naturally is to communicate with the person. I think there's a lack of communication when it comes to hurting because we want to protect and we want to pack up and go emotionally. And like you're saying, is in the communication with someone in a betrayal, in hurt, comes like growth and discovery. And if you can do that with someone, it's sort of like the possibilities. You don't know what the possibility is. And it could be something so much stronger than where you started.
Instead of us doing a piece of work in the sex lab, what I'd like to do is offer a appreciation. And for this particular patient, but also for the men and women that go through this kind of experience. So just whatever it is that you feel resonates with you about what you would like to offer in terms of an appreciation. Do you want to start?
I appreciate people being so vulnerable. I just think that there's such beauty in men and women that can just be like, I'm hurting, I'm sad, I'm happy, whatever it is that most of the world would take that as like, whoa, too much. But there's so much beauty in vulnerability. And so I just really appreciate, especially you guys being here and being so vulnerable, but to look at that in others in your life when people are being vulnerable, to not push it away, but actually invite it in, because that's where the human connection happens.
Michael.
Yeah, I am deeply appreciative of the people who can respond to hurt and lead with love and heal themselves in the partnership that they're in. Just so grateful to have been witness.
I'm grateful for our guests' transparency, honesty about such a painful topic, because I think that it makes all of us who have been through painful experiences able to realize, like, hey, there's nothing wrong with sharing your experience because you're not alone. I know, like, when you're experiencing something so deeply hurtful, you often feel alone and think you're the only one who's experienced it. So I'm very grateful that the guest came in to share her story, because I feel empowered to share my own.
I'm grateful for the guest and people that have been in her position that show up for the fight.
Yeah.
It's easy to just say, no, not gonna deal with this. But to show up for the fight, to show up for the work, to show up for the relationship, to be a partner and to have a partner that is going to go through some pretty tough stuff. There's a lot of resilience, there's a lot of character in that. And I'm very appreciative of people who do that.
Really appreciate the insight. It's easy to fall into victim mentality, but to be able to say, I was there and nobody else was there, not glorifying anything, but just that would be horrible for everybody else in the room. Nobody's there for me, and yet our guest was there for her partner along the way. And to be able to help us discern that there's another story along the way, and to come with love and care. I know it was hard fought to get to that point, but it really, it feels very inspiring in the end that love can win out with the right partner group getting together and everybody working the same way.
Yeah. I think her quote of be all in or get out, right, is really very deep on so many levels.
Thank you for joining us on The Sex Matters. Today we explored the complex dynamics of dominance, submission, trust, and surrender in relationships.
We heard a powerful story of resilience and healing in the face of betrayal. Remember, true intimacy requires vulnerability and the courage to be all in. Whether you're facing challenges or seeking to deepen your connections, I hope this episode has given you insights to reflect on.
Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and above all, approach your relationships with compassion and openness.
This is Dr. Twee
And Jenna Stewart.
signing off.